Efficiency Unlocked is hosted by two tech-savvy physicians and dear friends of mine, Drs. Adam Karu and Dale Gold, who are experts in using technology to automate routine tasks and increase efficiency in everyday and business life. Let's see what they have for us today.
Efficiency Unlocked.
In this first episode, Prelude to the Journey, Adam's Why, Dale takes us on an insightful conversation with Adam, our seasoned CMIO host, as he shares the prelude to his remarkable journey into the world of AI solutions for provider wellness. Delve into his motivations, experiences, and pivotal moments that ignited his passion for exploring innovative technologies. Gain valuable insights into his approach to evaluating companies and navigating the rapidly expanding landscape of AI in healthcare. Discover how Adam's personal journey shapes the narrative of our podcast, aiming to inspire and guide fellow CMIOs and other leaders through the intricate process of selecting the right solutions.
Welcome to the podcast today. Today we're going to do a prequel on the journey of Adam's Why on his quest to find AI solutions that are going to impact and innovate in healthcare. First question for you, Adam, is what sparked your interest in AI for healthcare?
No, thanks, Dale. That's a great question. And thanks for taking time to interview me today. We spend a lot of time text messaging throughout the day, but it's kind of unique to actually sit down and do an interview like this. You know, I think I've always been interested in this, and I've always thought that there would be a day when a clinician would just be able to walk into a room and start talking with the patient. And magically, the things that we do as part of an encounter as a clinician would be completed. And, you know, there was some promise with this probably early on, you know, with some of the vendors that were starting to do this, like through kind of scribing with like an actual human. And I used to share with some of our clinicians that, you know, that this is coming. Like there will be a day where you can actually just walk in. And I think that's been like kind of the guiding light that I've just been kind of waiting for, you know, as a physician and kind of technologist. And when the large language models came out and ChatGPT came out, you know, about, because it's actually it hasn't even been a year yet, which is crazy. That just opened the door to this possibility. So I'd say that's what sparked and catalyzed, you know, the interest in this.
No, that's great. You know, we've also seen how deeply you understand the challenges within the healthcare industry. Can you share a particular experience that solidified your focus on integrating AI, specifically in enhancing provider well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of, you know, the way the examples I would give or explain in this way is, you know, providers that moved from paper charts to electronic charts, took on a whole additional host of responsibilities. And, you know, because for the most part, it's much safer, you know, like for instance, for a provider to put in orders themselves rather than writing them on a piece of paper, having another human transcribe those, and then probably put those into an electronic system in some way. But I think what happened was the EMRs kind of turned into a billing machine and a coding machine. And the prospect of different technologies that could then start to augment all those administrative kind of tasks that a clinician uses throughout the day. I think that's the most kind of profound piece of this specifically.
No, that's great. I think that clearly that is something that you and I have both seen as potential. When did you first think that this task and AI and this solution would be a potential way to offload this to get to the thinking that you're at today?
Yeah, I think it was probably a culmination of a couple things. You know, some of the early vendors in this space, you know, had some kind of promise already with some of this technology. You know, like one of them that, you know, will be a future guest on this show. So I won't spoil who that is, but you know, they were creating summaries, you know, of a patient's inpatient, you know, journey at the hospital. And, you know, you think about as like a clinician working in the inpatient setting, you know, you have to keep this like running kind of log of what the patient has gone through. So at the end of that hospitalization, you can come up with a discharge summary. And the fact that like some technologies could actually start to do this for us and kind of queue that up. And then, taking it even more granular, like there could be a daily summary, that's provided. And I think, so those things were the first that caught my eye. And then I think coupled with seeing the initial demonstrations of some of these large language models, just listening ambiently, and then curating this summary. And, even playing around with that type of technology initially with ChatGPT, where you could just like kind of drop in a transcript, from a conversation that you have with a friend. And that transcript could be summarized and marked, like who was speaking. I was just blown away by that. And I was like, wow, this is going to transcend healthcare.
No, that's excellent. And I think your journey as a CMIO in that space and other healthcare leaders can likely relate that, this exposure to this new innovative technology and the potential that it can bring, really was very sudden and quick. What is your personal journey and your personal narrative on how you think of this podcast on your journey to explore those technologies and the conversations that you plan to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so just me personally, I feel like I'm a constant learner. I've really become, one that I want to read more books about kind of this topic and the way that some of the big thinkers in this space think. And so, I think the impetus for doing this podcast was kind of twofold. I'd say the selfish reason is I want to learn about what these companies are doing, because that will help me make a better educated decision or advice, for the health system that I work as a part of. And then additionally, I'm pretty extroverted for the most part, especially when I'm around people that are kind of, I guess, I don't want to say like-minded, but people that are kind of thinking in the same way of me. And so it's super exciting for me to get to meet, these CEOs, these founders, these chief medical officers that work within these companies, because, we get to learn a little bit about them and their why. And I think that really kind of paints a really cool picture of why these companies actually got started, maybe in the first place, and then how they're evolving, with this rapid AI wave that we're just starting to feel the upslope of.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that was an impetus for the NerdMDs community, for you and I, just understanding there are like-minded individuals at, every healthcare organization in isolation, solving some of these problems of, how can we put our minds together and make even more progress. Speaking of your expertise in this area, you've done some conversations, you've looked into these technologies for yourself. And I think as you have more conversations, you learn even more. What advice would you give to fellow healthcare leaders embarking on their AI integration journey for provider wellness, especially in some of the upcoming conversations you're going to be having around ambient AI and other AI?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And honestly, just some of the initial interviews that I've done have kind of even opened my mind and perspective up maybe a little different than I was initially thinking. I think there's kind of there's probably several things that you want to look for, but I'd say first and foremost, I think what you want to avoid, I'll start with that one. You want to avoid just like comparing features. Like a lot of times we call that like a bingo chart, where it's just like looking at the individual features of what a particular vendor can or can't do. And I think you generally want to avoid that, because I think the general assumption with all these vendors is that, they generally do kind of have a similar product. Like they have the similar function that's going to help. If we just take kind of ambient listening, note creation, all the vendors from a small startup to the larger enterprise, behemoths, they're all doing the very similar thing. So I think what's probably most important is to really focus on what your priorities are as a health system or a group that's, purchasing one of these solutions, and to think about, what are your goals? Do you just want like a really good product that's going to work, and you don't necessarily want to give feedback to that company, there's a lot of great solutions that, even an individual clinician could subscribe to use this as a part of their private practice or small group. So I think it kind of comes down to what the actual priorities are. If you're a large health system that really wants to help shape a company, I think that could cause you to choose one or the others of these companies that maybe has a little bit more of a vision behind what they want to actually become. So I guess it's a long-winded way of saying, like, don't be like super narrowly focused on the details of what they have today. Think about kind of what they're going to be in the future. And I think coupled with that is, obviously you have to do the due diligence for security and quality and all the other aspects that come with a vendor solution like this. But that's, if you're a large health system, you're going to have processes and people to actually investigate that. But that's, I'd say, is like what I've kind of learned in just this like shorter period of time of this initial exploration.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I learned through your exploration, just how nuanced some of these solutions can be. And I think focusing on that strategy or solution you're trying to solve and having that alignment becomes even more important with so many options available. But the work that you're doing to look at all of these and summarize these, to me as a fellow leader is valuable, because each of those meetings takes time. And, all of us know that is difficult to look on the whole field of a certain area and take that kind of view.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think it's like, again, you asked me that earlier question, and I think, the other impetus for doing this, like I said, kind of the selfish reason. I don't know if I actually shared the altruistic reason, but like, I truly want to help like the entire medical community, become better. I think ultimately healthcare, whether you're a competitor in the local city or a national competitor, we're all on like the same team. I mean, we're all trying to take better care of patients and lead to better health outcomes. So this technology, I think, is going to be that ultimate enabler that's going to really transcend that. So there is that kind of shared community aspect of like, let's share our best practices and help others, make good decisions for their situation.
No, that's a great reminder on that as being the key focus there. Balancing your role as a healthcare leader and your passion for cutting edge technology is quite the feat. Can you share with the audience just how you seamlessly blend these two worlds and what excites you the most about the future impact of AI in healthcare?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because if you could see where I'm sitting in my home office right now, I have like this super sweet, like Optimus Prime robot that actually transforms. And, I have like a Tesla Cybertruck remote control car that I'm actually most of the time afraid to drive because it goes like 50 miles an hour in like 2 seconds. And first time I did it, I crashed it into a fence. Now it has a dent on it. But I think that just highlights, I have a 3D printer over there. I'm just kind of looking around our room. So I think it's, I like love technology. Like, so my day when I have spare time, I'm like reviewing kind of the most current things that have come out. I subscribe to just a ton of like old school RSS feeds. So I'm getting that kind of information flow focused around technology. And then I think what's super exciting about this is like being able to apply this to healthcare, because we're physicians, like we were trained in medical school like everybody else was. But I think where we're kind of fundamentally different, and this is where, an informaticist that truly has like this kind of applied nature to the way of their thinking and execution, we're able to look at that landscape of technology, understand the current landscape of technology in healthcare, and try to figure out ways that can be incorporated, because we're going after usually specific kind of, for a health system, you're going after a big health system goal that, and health systems are going to have different goals that they're going to go after, as an enterprise. But I think being able to understand enough of the technology and enough of the options out there, and then also understanding those problems that are faced in healthcare for either the clinicians or for patients, you can be a part of that discussion where you get to craft, these solutions that ultimately are technology, but you get to craft the people part, the process part, and the integration of the ultimate technology solution. So
Yeah,
I think that's what's so exciting. And I know you're obviously excited about that kind of stuff too.
No, it's very exciting. And I kind of want to hit on that point one more time and sort of ask you for the audience. Also, can you give a little bit insight, in your role as a chief medical information officer in that space, and what do you view your role and responsibility in taking care of your organization providers, and how can they use you best in this type of role, evaluating this type of space?
No, it's a super good question. I mean, it's an interesting role, that how the CMIO role has evolved, I think, over time. I think, so current state, I see the CMIO of a health system as being kind of one of those roles that kind of transcends every aspect of a care delivery system. And so you almost have to have your foot, it's like a, why am I drawing a blank on the name of that game? What's the game with the dots where you get all tangled with people? I'm totally drawing a blank on that game. Jesus.
Maybe the audience is screaming it right now.
Yeah, they definitely are. Anyway, that's what we call a brain fart in your mid 40s. Anyway, bad analogy because I can't remember the actual name of it, but I feel like you're like an octopus, and you have all these little tentacle arms that are involved in different spaces. And, I think there's real benefit of a clinician informaticist to be involved on the front end of a lot of these problems that the healthcare system are tackling. And these could be small things, we're trying to improve access in cardiology, ambulatory appointments. It may not seem that's not necessarily a technological solution that's ultimately going to help this. But, an informaticist can be really good on the front end of that, because when you're ideating about, what process you want to implement to help this problem, you can kind of be throwing out the potential options there are, in the system, or in your EMR, or in the vendor landscape that can help kind of shape what ultimately is the solution. So I think there's benefit to being there on the front end, and then there's clearly benefit to being there on the later end too. The problem is that a clinician informaticist can't be there all the time. It's tough to be a part of those. But I think that's probably I think that's the biggest value of someone, and I keep using the term clinician informaticist because I think, it doesn't matter what background you come in. There's nurses that are informaticists, there's pharmacists, there's physicians, there's other clinical folks that could get into this kind of role. But I think the key is these people understand enough of the technology, they're good communicators, and they can understand and read the room and help kind of ideate and ultimately come up with a really good, end solution.
No, I think that's going to be really helpful for, those less familiar with the role, and, as it evolves, to hear your opinion on that. I think we're all really excited to see you on this journey to evaluate all these technologies and see what we can learn, see what you learn, see how you think about it. For the rest of the audience, Adam is doing this because he enjoys it. This is the work that he loves to do. And, nobody's putting him up to this, but he just can't stop meeting people and talking to them about their stories and their journey and their why. Can you share for us just a recent moment of where you found joy exploring this path, and maybe it's a connection or something that you've discovered that's really strengthened your resolve to continue on this journey of having this podcast and meeting these great innovators?
Yeah, yet another good question, Dale. It is, I think, every person that I meet, I think, so, well, let me back up. In general, the general circle of specifically physician kind of technologists or informaticists is relatively small. It's kind of one of those things that if you show up at a conference, you're probably going to run into a handful of people that you already actually know pretty well that don't actually work with you on a day-to-day basis. But, I think what's I mean, I think what's so good about this community and about doing this is, you do just form these like new relationships. And, I think depending on your situation where you're currently employed or wanting to be employed or wanting to get into this space, there are so many places where you can get into this area. And I think what's really cool about this is like you said, getting to know the people and truly understanding like why they do what they do. And what I think you realize is that many of us have the exact same kind of guiding light that we're trying to follow. And, I think, Dale and I, we helped develop a program in the health system that I work for, where we used the motto, like more time for what matters. And that motto was like, it could apply to a lot of things, but, I think just making yourself more efficient, helping to make others more efficient, like allows us to do the things that are more meaningful to us. And I think this AI revolution, obviously within healthcare, is going to do this, but I think this AI revolution is going to totally change the way kind of humans operate eventually too. It feels very science fiction at this point, but I totally got off track from like your original question, but I felt like it was necessary to dive into that aspect as well. But circling back to your original question, it's so fun for me to like meet these people, and it's like building this kind of interconnected network, of folks that, I'm probably not going to be their best friend, but I have them in my phone book, and there's going to be a time and a place where I'm going to be like, oh, remember when I went to dinner with like that one physician that I met, and we like talked about basketball or whatever. I'll be like, oh, he used to work for this company. I'm going to see what he's doing, and I'll text them. So it's all about building those relationships.
Well, I'm really excited to see what you have in store for us and learn a little bit more about some of these companies. And I think that we're going to have some fun along the way. So thank you so much for sharing with the audience. I think this is really helpful to understand the why on this journey that you're going to take us on as we meet a lot of these innovators. And next episode, if everyone wants to tune in, we're going to be talking about Adam's approach. So sort of navigating the flooded sea of AI options and how Adam's going to be approaching this research opportunity and which vendors to select and how to evaluate those objectively. So I think it's going to be helpful for all of us to see how he thinks about it and go through that process right alongside of him. So thank you, Adam.
That sounds awesome. Looking forward to episode 2. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you for listening to Efficiency Unlocked, Nerd Tested, MD Approved, a Nerd MD's podcast by Drs. Adam Carew and Dale Gold.